Hey guys, I think we're live, so welcome to everyone. I'm here with Fabian.
Everyone.
Fabian, say hello.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for showing up. And thanks also if you're watching the replay to this. Yeah, welcome to our first bonus live session. We weren't going to do lives. Originally, we were going to do just the recorded group critiques because it's a lot easier just to go in depth without like the issues of internet lag and all those fun things. But yeah, we just wanted to connect with you guys, make sure that we can make this as useful as possible for you, and just hang out for a little bit, see if any questions come up. Yeah. So I see there are a bunch of you guys in the chat already. Welcome. If you can hear us, if you could just let us know in the chat, that'd be awesome. And yeah, if you just let us know if you've enjoyed the first few lessons. Been out for about 5 days now, I think. So I hope you've got on with that. I've seen tons of great thumbnails in the Facebook group already. So big congrats to everyone that's posted those. So yeah, I'm gonna hand the mic over to David. I'll be hanging out in the chat with you guys, answering your questions while David's on screen share. So if any questions come up, well, if you have any questions at any point, just pop them in the chat, and I'll answer them. David was going to do
the buddy. All right, good.
David was going to do the intro, and I realized I just did all of it. So.
No, you were like, "You want to do the intro?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And then you went through the whole thing. So yeah, basically, guys, welcome. So like Fabian says, I saw a lot of good stuff on Facebook, comparing most between me getting to bed last night and to this morning. So you guys really show up all your works, and it was absolutely great. I went through it this morning. What I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna go through some work on Photoshop. I'm gonna show a few mistakes that I saw that I think a lot of people can just get better. We're just gonna reinforce what happened in the first module. If you have questions, like Fabian says, just pop them in. Fabian is gonna ask me, and I'll answer them, or if Fabian is able to answer them on the chat, he will do. And beside that, I'm also going to try to just brush over the Facebook because there's so much work on it, and I would like just to be able to just cover all the small things I think that you guys can just get better at, or if I saw that people didn't understand certain things. Basically, if you have any question, once again, just let us know. Beside that, I'm just going to start sharing my screen. We're going to start with a few of them that I already put in Photoshop right now. So sharing screen. Fabian, you should see the screen.
Yes. Hey, just a quick note. As we mentioned during the launch a few times now, obviously we're not going to be able to cover everybody's work during every session. Did you want to quickly just say a few words about that, David?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a bonus, guys. We were not supposed to do this one because the first module is it's so going quickly. We just wanted to have something that ease you in, and then next week we would have a group session where I'm going to cover the basic mistake that everybody does. Basically, those group sessions are there for people that I see that they're missing a few information. I'll be taking the time over the work, but not just for them, but for everybody to learn and to be able to learn from it. So really, you can see it as those critiques as being just extra classes, but that are more about corrections and how to get better in the module that you guys are learning. Was that a good explanation?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And also just as we mentioned, I think it's more useful for everyone if we spend longer going in depth into fewer pieces rather than just like scratching the surface on a whole bunch of them.
Exactly.
So we're going to always try to pick like a selection of the pieces that we think like represent as many people as we can. Real quick before you start, David, have you made sure to set yourself to presenter on presenter?
No, I guess not. Yeah. How do I do that again?
Hover over the
presenter
arrow.
Everyone. Is that working now?
Yes, I think so. So if you could let us know in the chat when I'm talking now, does the camera stay on David's screen? Let us know, that'd be awesome. Let's assume it is, and yeah, go for it.
All right, let's jump in. All right, so I'm going to start with the work of Moon. So I'm starting with this one. I'm going to start with a few pieces of work that I think that you guys really nailed it, just to show like example of what I think is a good sketch. We're going to talk about a few things. Actually, I have a few notes here I'm going to open so we can talk about those as well. I was a few questions in the chat, in the Facebook, I mean, about should I take a portrait only? Should I take a full body? And my answer to that is it's really up to you. Most of the class, I'm going to give you a lot of good tips on anatomy about portraiture. But beside portraiture, we're going to learn lots of light technique. We're going to learn coloring. We're going to learn some tips about backgrounds. It's a very complete class program. I mean, and so even if you take a full body, you'll have a lot of material for you to be able to just implement it. But I won't cover anatomy of the rest of the body. So if you feel like the body is a real challenge for you, I would suggest for you to not go full body, just because I want you to really concentrate on the learnings and have something that is going to be just a little bit of a challenge, obviously, but not too hard. I don't want you to be frustrated in the process and just run behind schedule because you took something that was too hard. So just keep that in mind. But obviously, give yourself a little bit of a challenge, and that's going to be a lot more fun this way. Anyway, that being said, I wanted to show Moon's work because I think it's absolutely great. And I'm going to point out the few things that I like. I feel like every thumbnail that you gave me are all different, and that's really great. And I'm going to talk about a client perspective here. All right. So usually that stage of thumbnail that we've been working on this week, it's the stage that you keep for yourself. You don't really show that to the client. You will show a state that's a little bit more advanced, that you took a little bit more time and you refine a little bit, but it's also important to have a lot of different ideas, because if the client at some point you show them your first sketches and they're like, you know what, it's not exactly what I want, to have some thumbnails like these ones is really important, to just being able to be like, oh, okay, right, if you don't like those ones, I also have those ones that are a little bit more rough, but here's like different ideas. Is there something that interests you? To be able to have that card in your deck when you present to your client is really good. And so the reason why I say all that is because I really like what you did, Moon, because all the ideas are different perspective. You play with the camera angle. So kudos for that. I really like them. So I'm just going to point a few things that are really cool. Also, the values that you've been using are really crisp. So you took like 3 different values, and we understand really what's in the foreground, in the midground, and in the background. So really, really nice for that as well. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's really good. Fabien, if you have anything to say, obviously feel free to jump in at any time.
Yeah, cool. And again, if there's any questions at any stage, just feel free to pop them in the chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I absolutely love these thumbnails too. Like Dave was saying, lots of very cool, very unique ideas, and I like how you've played around with just combining different like groups of characters. Which one sticks out to you personally that you like the most, David?
That's a good question. I don't know. There's a few concepts in here that I really like. I really like this one here with the wolf in the background. I just like the fact that he played with 2 kind of perspectives. So you have the wolf that you see from a lower angle, and then you have the front angle of Sherlock, and just the progression of all the things, all the characters here. I really like it. I really like the angles like this, that you had a diagonal where also you play with the foreground here with the mouth of the wolf open. It's very not interactive. What's the word? Dynamic. It's very dynamic class. Absolutely. I like that you have a good understanding also to the foreground, background, middle ground. Like here, you have a lot of characters, but you didn't put them in white because they're really secondary. So you let them in the gray background. So that was really, really nice. Really, I'm just impressed with this work. I think it's very, very good. And that's the reason why I want to present it. Is there one that marked your eye, or?
God, it'd be really hard to pick. Also,
I know it's hard for you. Also, I have the control over it, but
yeah, for sure. I thought it was a good point you just made on the diagonals to make it more dynamic. I think that's actually something a lot of beginner artists maybe struggle with, is making everything to just using right angles, making everything too straight. And I think it can definitely work with the right composition. Like ones that I think work really well are the there's one a bit further down with the teeth at the top and the bottom. I think especially when you have like symmetry like that,
yes.
a very straight kind of a very straight composition can work really well.
Yeah.
A lot of other times, if it's not necessarily a symmetrical design, then kind of putting it at an angle or diagonal can just add a lot of movement and kind of dynamicness to the composition. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, these will obviously will be more advanced to render. I'm assuming, Moon, you seem to be a more advanced student also, to be able to render like several characters in one piece. Like David said, if you're still kind of getting started and you're not feeling as confident with this yet, stick to just one character. It'll be a lot easier to really just nail one character. But if you are more confident, then adding several characters is a very cool way to.
Absolutely, that's a fair comment. Also, like that comment is the same for me. That if you do full body, make sure that you have a little bit more background knowledge. If you do many faces, that's the same thing. A face can take some time, so in this case, you have a few of them. But yeah, I'll let the call to you guys. So if you feel like you're able to do it, go for it. Otherwise, just be careful of this.
Cool.
All right, there's two more that I wanted to show here, just the
Hey,
stuff that I really like.
Hey, real fast. How about
Yeah.
for each of them? We also ask the group, everyone who's online at the moment, which one would you go with? So maybe quickly go back to Moons. Did you close it already?
No, I don't think so. I didn't close it. I just need to click on that, I think. Is it? I got a few here now. I'm all mixed up in them. Here, there we go.
Cool. Maybe just zoom out real fast.
Yeah, there's a lot, so
Go
that's
from-
hard to be zoom in. There'll be too small.
Yeah. I guess
That's
it'll be
the
easier for
problem.
some of the other ones. But yeah, if you have any thoughts, which ones you prefer, if you're in the chat right now, maybe.
Yeah. Or you can go on Facebook for you guys, and maybe it's gonna be easier. I think Moon was the first one to post his thumbnail. So if you scroll down quite a bit, you should see them. It's gonna be easier, but I'm sure that's another thing we wanted to talk to you guys. I saw a lot of good comments, and I love that. The community is so important. It's more than just a community; it's a tool that you can use for yourself as well. So you guys, it's really important that everybody goes and try to take the time to at least give at least two students comments. Anybody is able to give constructive comments, constructive direction to anybody. So that's really cool, and it's fun for everybody to just have a different pair of eyes on their work. I use it a lot. I use Fabian a lot for every professional that I work, even for my personal work. And sometimes I go over community on Facebook as well to ask for people to help me. So go ahead, guys, use that, help each other. This is the best way for you to learn as fast as possible.
For sure. Quick question also. Moon was actually asking if you have any tips on making a more dynamic composition.
Wow, from what I see, you're actually doing really good. For thumbnails, I think you did a great job already. I will be able to give you more tips later on when you're going to put a little bit more details. When we're going to do the line work next module, for example, next week, you'll be able to add more stuff like showing how wind could go, or how the movement of the camera could go. In terms of the thumbnails right now, I think you did a great job. Obviously, if you have movements, you have to show it with certain techniques that I'll be able to show a little bit later. So if you ask me the question a little bit later on in your process, I'll be able to give you precise tips over Photoshop. Right now, if you have something that I'm trying to look for one that has movement, so I can tell you like, all right, let's move this one or this one. Like, let's say for maybe this one in the middle, if you were to have this one to have some movement, you would just have to just basically, and obviously I won't be able to do a great job because there's not a lot of pixels on this, and also it's a thumbnail. But having just, let's imagine the wolf moving, you would just have to just blur the edges to some parts and have the other ones a little bit more tight, a little bit more hard edge, basically, and that would show movement. But right now, I think the dynamics that you have is already really, really good. You can see what's happening, but for now it's just thumbnails, so you don't have to put more than you already did. Once you have your sketch chosen, your design chosen, your concept chosen, I'll be able to give you a little bit more tips.
I think, and also, I'm assuming Moon's asking more about like the actual, like a dynamic composition rather than necessarily movement. Although movement is a really great way to add a bit of like a dynamic feel to the illustration. I think one of the best ways to do that also is yeah, using those diagonals that you're doing very well, and also just using those guiding lines, having just very strong guiding lines. So I think like some examples where you're doing it really well is the center one that David has in the center right now. Nope, back up. where he's kind of holding his pipe, and like the moon's up in the top left corner. Just having that like
This one.
no, the sorry, not the moon, the wolf,
Oh,
the one
okay.
below it.
Yeah.
Just those like the curves going from like the very last from the moon through to
Yeah.
those middle characters up through to the
Absolutely. There's a trick that I wanted to show actually about that, because there's a lot, like you said in the module, there's a lot of ways to actually put your work on the grid. It's always fun to have it in back in your head, so then you can see those things. And actually, this one, I think, I'm not sure, I want to check it, but if you use the cropping tool in Photoshop, and then you go at the top here, you can choose different grid on it. And if you choose a golden ratio, you cannot flip it. So in this case, it would be the opposite. But I feel like it's almost like on the golden ratio actually right now. So that's probably the reason why it attracts the eye most. It's because it's actually following that curve here. So you have the curve of the two characters, and then it becomes a little bit more busy. So that's very good. I don't know if you did that intentionally, but very, very good composition so far.
That plus, I'd say actually also, for me personally, I've always found the rule of thirds, like sticking to that is probably like, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make a composition more dynamic.
Absolutely.
Thrown off balance a little bit, I think the mistake too many beginners make is like just completely centering everything, like putting, for example, a horizon in the center, putting the character completely in the center.
Yeah.
And it's actually much more interesting if you move them over to the thirds, to the edges of the canvas. So
yeah, I absolutely don't disagree with that. Just the edge of the canvas. I was about to say a few things about that actually. Obviously, there is center placement that are working better, like this one here, for example, like this.
Yeah, for sure.
One, but when it comes to something that has to be a little bit more off-centered, absolutely, just keep it with the rule of third is a great thing. When it comes to the edges, though, being careful. Like, obviously, this is a sketch right now; it's no problem, it's an idea. But if I were to say something about this, your edge here with the nose and the ears is way too close of the border. So that's one thing you want to be aware of when you're going to push it later on. Right now, it's fine; the idea is there. But same thing with the hat. At the exception if you make it past the edges. So for example, if you decided that the white of your canvas would, let's say, stop here, or maybe even stop here, and then you would have just the wolf getting outside of the edge, maybe even like Sherlock, if you do this like that, if that's any clearer. Something like that, and then it's fine. But having just the edge too close of the border, you always have to be careful of those things. Those
Yeah,
are
true, that's a
called
good point, yeah.
tangent line, if I remember right in English.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's something you'll notice more as you start to flesh out concepts. So Moon is saying, lastly, which one is best? I mean, there's really no, it's so subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were able to, because that's another thing. If you were to show it to a client like stuff, you would have to show a lot less, because the problem now is, although it's a strength to have so many, if you show too many to your client, what they're going to do is they're going to take like their 3-4 best, and they're going to ask you to make like a new one out of those. You don't want that. That's extra work for you. What you want to do is having like a selection of very conceived work that you like to do. That's very important. No matter what kind of client you're working, obviously you want to do what they like, but you want to make sure also that you'll be happy working on that project. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long project. So if I were you, I would just downsize those to the 6. And then from the 6, you can maybe pass a vote on Facebook and try to ask for people to choose the one that you prefer if you're not able to take a decision. In my case, there's so many of them. I can literally go through all of them if you want right now. Definitely this one. Very, very dynamic.
Yeah, I like
very
that one.
Cool. I like this one also for the dynamics of it. It's very nice with the
I like that one.
diagonal.
I've got a feeling that one could be difficult to. It might seem a little off balance once the text is placed in the bottom.
That's
Plus, also
true.
the text might be hard to read.
That's true. Keeping in mind the placement of the text is important.
Especially also keep in mind the black. So in that one, about halfway through it, it goes from light to black. The text is going to either need to be black on a light background, or the text will need to be light on a dark background, which almost always looks better if you have light text on a dark background. So if you do go with that one, then be aware of that you would have to figure out a way to darken, keep the bottom third of
you would
it,
have maybe have to make either a smaller amount that would stop here, something like that. Or if you go with a big mouth like that later on, you'll be able to maybe just take a. Sometimes what I do is I use a saffron brush, and then you darken a little bit as a gradient, for example. But those are techniques that you can have a lot later on. Right now, we're just pointing at the possible problem you can face later on. But for now, it's really just about the idea. So this absolutely. I like this one as well because I like the perspective of the camera. It's very good from under, very nice, pointing at the moon. It's also very dynamic. I like this one just because I like all the characters that popping outside of it. For me, in my head, I kind of imagine like a poster of an anime, kind of a anime story a little bit. And I like with the mask just right here. It's very, very cool. Maybe I can see
Yeah,
you
that's
could
very cool.
you could have like a spotlight. What you were saying, Fabian?
I was just saying that one's very cool. I think that one's actually possibly my favorite.
Huh? Um, yeah, this
Although
one really like.
I really like that one too. It's so hard
Yeah,
to
there's
decide.
there's so many. That's the thing. Like you did such a great job at it, and then you give too many options. So you see, if I was the client, you would have a problem right now because I would go through all of them and be like, oh, you know what? I want a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that. Please make a new one now. So you don't want that. So make sure that you have diversity, your strongest only, and then pick one of those. That's what I would say. I hope this is helping you. I don't think I can push you more than that. Like I really like also what you did here with the light over the eyes. Very cool with the smoke of the wolf. That could be really really interesting. I feel like the composition right now is not at its best, but the concept is very very strong.
For sure.
Um,
Hey, one just bit of advice, I guess, because you're saying like narrow it down. If this goes for everyone in the course, if you do do a lot of work for any of the assignments, you can always post like one picture where you have like all of it, and then try to maybe pick like just 6 of them, for example, or pick like a smaller selection as if you would be showing it to the client. So then you can pick one, you can post one to the group where you're showing all of it to get feedback on the whole thing, and then like a self-selected group of them.
Absolutely. That's great advice, actually, because you have to remember, guys, we will go through a lot of material like to learn and to get better as artists. But keep in mind that this is also a class to just have a little bit of an experience as working with a client. And working with a client, they'll ask you to be clear. They'll ask you to look professional. They'll ask you to be conceived. So you just have to make sure that each time you post something on the Facebook, post in two ways. Post as a student and part of the community that wants to share your progress because everybody loves that and it's great. And then try to have maybe a more presentable client work where you have a little bit less of sketches, because I saw a lot of them and I'm going to go through them over Facebook later on, where you guys basically did your sheets and then picked one in a sheet and then just this one and just put the sheets. It's great for people to show your process. We learn from there, so it's really good. But if you were to show that to a client, it would need more precise options. That being said, I'm going to move on here to
Yeah,
this
cool.
one.
Great work, Moon.
Absolutely. So that's Pleo. Pleo, I wanted to show your work because I was really like into the different options, and that's a great thing that we're talking about. You see, you give me 6 options. They're all different. They're all easy to read. The cameras have been moved on. The concepts are very strong as well, and that's the reason why I wanted to show it today. I really like the one here with the reflection. That's going to be quite the challenge, especially if you want to do the water and everything. But if you feel like you can do it, go for it. I would say that's also one of my favorite with this one here. I really like the eclectic with the different parts of it. I think you're going to have a lot of fun rendering this one. That could be really, really cool. Each of them are very, very like strong, I think, and very different from each other. So for that reason, I wanted to show it to you. Also, show it to the rest of the class. Also, very clear with your foreground, middle ground, background in terms of using the values. Especially when you come here, I can see that she's going through that keyhole kind of doorway, and there's a background, there's a foreground. So that's very good as well. So very good use of the material here. Did you want to say a word about this one?
I think you covered that really well. I absolutely love the concepts on those. I love just the way that you've added little symbols and kind of merged things together. So, for example, that like keyhole door, or things like that, kind of like the moon smile with the rabbit
Yeah.
on the bottom left. I think the more like, I mean, any illustration will generally, like it'll have, I think the most powerful illustrations are ones that you can read in layers, that like you look at and it's immediately clear straight away what's going on. You
Yeah.
get the whole idea, but then the more you look at it, the more you find all these little subtle, like kind of smaller things that have
Symbols.
been hinted
Yeah.
at, little
Yeah,
details,
I
little
love
like,
that.
yeah, it's like little bonus things for the viewer. And I think that's what really separates like a very, very strong professional illustration from one that's nicely rendered, but you know the concept might not have been pushed as hard.
Yeah.
So the more of those, obviously, you don't want to go completely overboard, but like sprinkling in some smaller layers and details like that,
Hmm.
um, very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, actually, and it's gonna be actually. It's always good thinking about it when you start like this here, so you already thought about it. But it's something that you can also add along the way later. So, so I'll show actually tricks at the pretty much at the end. I think on the last module, I'm gonna have like a session with you guys when I'm going through all small ways to just bonify your portraiture or bonify your illustration itself. So yeah, great work here, Pleo. Very, very nice. And here, I wanted to show this one also as well because I think it's a very strong concept here. So there was a lot of people asking me online, should I stick to something that's more close to the story? Should I go, something completely different? And that's a very good example. This one looks to me almost like it's a mini comic, so I really like it. That's the work from Cynthia Green. I absolutely love it. If I look at each of them, they're very clear. You see foreground, middle ground, background. There's a good concept out of it. So she has like a Little Riding Hood, but she's sort of a fighter of a. It seems like a utopia. I think I don't remember exactly what the word she was using on Facebook for this one. It was like an utopia where she's fighting against power. I'm guessing from what I see right now.
Dystopia, I guess, seems more like in this sense. So dystopia, I guess, kind of looks like it's based on like 1984 style. Yeah,
Like
which looks very cool.
Big Brother kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely love this one. So I wanted to show it because you guys were asking the question, should I stick close? You don't have to stick close at all. Let your imagination run wild. Obviously, if it was a client, a pure client work, they would have a fixed story. They would ask you the fixed story. But because we're learning and we can have a little bit more fun, a little bit more, getting a little bit more loose with the concept, there's nothing wrong about doing this. So I wanted to show that example for doing that because I think she nailed it. Absolutely. Very nice. I like the symbols as well that just repeats here and here that represent the wolf and then the wolf that is here, and you can see a little bit the engagement of the two characters between her and the wolf, and the perspective here is very dramatic as well. Very cool. So a good use of the camera angle. I would say that for me, in terms of what is the strongest, it's definitely this one here. What would you say, Fabian, if I show the
Yeah, I'd
six?
say so. I completely agree with everything you said. I do think the top two, I'll be completely on the top right two, I'll be completely honest, I don't think they're going to work very well as posters. I don't think it's clear enough immediately what's going on there. Like if you zoom right out, David,
Yeah.
you'll see that with like even further if you make it like even smaller.
You got a
I mean,
good
this is
point.
always a good.
Think about. I was in the
Sorry.
story. I said, "You got a good point." I was in the story so much I forgot about the use of that image.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, this is always a good test. If you zoom out even further, David, that's always a good test to use on your own thumbnails. Like, is the thumbnail legible when it's just a few centimeters by a few centimeters across on your screen?
Mhm.
I think most of the bottom ones are. The top left one, harder, but it could still work. I think the top right two just don't read very well in small. I think the character, I think especially for this brief, I think it should be very character focused. And I think the characters are just getting lost there. I really like the idea you had in the top center one with the wolf looking down, the silhouette of the wolf, but I think that might just be too hard to
This
read.
one, huh?
Yeah, for sure. So
Well,
I'd say, uh,
um,
sorry.
I was about to just suggest ways to just bonify those. But continue. I'll say it after.
Cool. So the bottom right one, I like the idea. I think generally an illustration will be, unless you're doing pure landscape, then that's a different story. But most of the time, and of course there's exceptions to every rule, but almost all the time an illustration is going to be more interesting if there's like a key character for the viewer to connect with. So that can be like, it can be a creative it can be a creative risk, I guess, to have the character facing its back only, because in that case the main character to the viewer, the only character that the viewer can connect with is a wolf. So you'd have to really make the wolf a very strong and powerful character, which could be tough, especially because the wolf is quite small there. So I'd be careful with facing the character away. You want the viewer to form some sort of bond or some sort of connection with one of the characters in a portrait-based illustration. So I would have the character facing the viewer. I really like the bottom left one. It's going to be a fairly tough one to do with the foreshortening. The other issue I see with that one is that the bottom right, not the bottom right, the bottom third, sorry. Remember that the text will be in the bottom third. So if you do go with that one, I would maybe scoot the character up a little so that there's some sort of darker element in the bottom third of the illustration.
That's why I wanted to just do a few things. Like you say, everything you say is absolutely right. I think I was just amazed by the storytelling. But obviously in poster, each of them, right now it looks like a comic, and that's what I absolutely love about those. But in terms of poster, maybe the images need to be modified, like Fabian says. I think definitely this one in terms of poster works the best, but not in the proportions that are there. So if I were to just copy that character real quick here and then make a copy. Let's try to have it, whoopsie. Try to have it just a little bit bigger already. So she takes a little bit more space. And the background still works. But right now, you see, that's a little bit more poster-like. She's very, very much the hero of the story, and it's clear. It's going to be clear from far away as well. And you got one big character right there, and then you still keep your storytelling with your little wolf and the wolf of the Obe. So all that works, but now at least you got more poster-like. In terms of this one, I would try to have a better composition as is. So right now it's very flat A, and she is too much on the side. Like if you were to use my trick again, I'm using the crop tool here, and I just put it on top of it. It's going to be maybe hard for you guys to see on screen because it's only a small, tiny line. I'm going to put the rule of third here, and you can see the rule of third comes here, and she's just too far. You would have to at least put the right or left eye here on the line would be actually better. So just once again, trying to have that obviously would have to draw the other side of the face, so draw the full character, but you would have to just bring that character a little bit more in front, and maybe she's passing a little bit in front of that, and it's going to give also a lot of perspective. And another trick I'll give you in a second. I'm just going to quickly, obviously you would have to redo the background. I'm going to use just some gray for now, and you would have to do the character as well. But what you could do is have also just a perspective. Instead of having a flat wall like this, maybe just have it a little bit more of a perspective. So I'm going to grab just that face of the Obe, copy, and just up a perspective. Maybe the whole wall should have the perspective, actually. I'm just going to take the whole thing. Just a bit of a perspective like that. Just having something a little bit more dynamic this way. So small changes like that, I think, would create better portrait. But I really think that so far, this one is your strongest piece right now. Although every images is very strong as a concept wise, but for the poster, I think you just need narrative a little bit stronger with the character. Like this one even does the same thing. Like the image is really cool, like the background and everything. But if you were just to take the character itself and just make her the very much center of poster, and it works here actually. Here, just if I were to just even make her get out of the poster like that, that would be even more clear. So you can imagine that you would have like the poster going down up to here, and you would have some white like this. That here, and you would like get out of the image like this. So it helps also as a framing element. Just have her very big, and you keep your background with all the details that you already give like this. I hope this is clear. You could do the same thing for each of them. Basically, it's just they need a little bit of modification to just make her. It's just the only one that the two ones that I see a little bit more difficult becoming poster wise is those two right here, because you could literally just take another character and putting in front of that background. That background is amazing. And you could also have another way to do it. You could also have just a copy of the main character at two places, like as a presentation of the character right here, and then having her in the background just a little bit like that. So it's more like showing two frames of the story into the poster. So telling the poster of the heroine, so it's very clear that she is the main attraction of this poster, of the movie and everything, and then having like a piece of the story here when you have it at the back here, and it doesn't matter if it's the back because we have the connection that we want with the main character from front view right here. So that could be one way to actually save this concept. This one here, I agree with Fabian. I think if you wanted to show a portrait of a altercation or fight, I'm looking for the word
altercation.
Gracias.
I guess
that word. You could have actually just maybe a face-to-face. Obviously, the dynamic pause would be different, but for the poster, it would be very, very good. So having just, her that just face. I'm gonna make a face real quick here, so you understand the face, and then you would have maybe the face of the wolf. Obviously, I think with the nose a little bit more like this. Just face to face, that they look at each other. So on the poster, that could be one thing if you wanted to do this concept. But as is right now, it's a good frame for a story, for a comic book, but it won't work, I think, as a poster, in fact. And this one, same thing, I think, with this. If you just made sure that you have a big character and then you have this wolf that comes after. I really like that shape. You could have the city like this, and then maybe you can have like a mountain in the background like this. I think that's actually what you did. I wasn't sure, but like the mountain, and then it's the sky and the negative space that creates the head of the wolf. That could be really cool. So I hope that's all helping you. Fabian, did you want to add something to this?
Yeah, some really good points. Just wanted to underline, just add my thoughts to a few things you just said. So again, I mean, I think the atmosphere, the backgrounds that you created work really nice. They're very atmospheric. I think the key thing to keep in mind is, like David just said, they'd work really well in like a graphic novel or a cartoon of sorts. And maybe I'm assuming that's probably your background or one of your bigger interests. But obviously, when you're getting commissioned to do work, you always have to keep the medium in mind. The medium is so important because something that's going to look good in a graphic novel isn't necessarily going to translate to a movie poster. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. So for example, like the top right one, I think would work really well in a graphic novel, but it needs that big character, I think, in a movie poster format, because obviously you need to think about like what the end goal is going to be. It's going to be a movie. It's going to be a poster that's stuck on a billboard somewhere, maybe next to the road, on a bus station, something like that. And people will only have a few seconds a lot of the time to just like quickly glance at it and judge the movie based on that. So it has to be immediately clear what's going on, and the character has to immediately be there, immediately be obvious. So I think like over 90% of the time, I'd say it's going to make a more powerful movie poster to have a large character. Few things. I like David's idea for the top left with having the character like slightly coming out of the composition. I love the way that can create some framing. I think for a movie poster that might not work as well, because you're going to end up with just white space at the bottom of like a printed poster, which
text could be
look a little awkward. And one thing also, I think for the center bottom one, good point, actually, I think that is interesting for everyone to keep in mind also is the idea of overlapping. I think creating like layers in the background. This actually comes back to what Moon asked earlier about making a composition more dynamic. I think this is another great way to do it, is by creating like layers in the perspective. So rather than having objects just next to each other, see if you can play with the overlapping. So they're like one's really in the front and then it really overlaps over the ones in the back. That'll create a lot of like depth and perspective to the illustration. So I hope that makes sense. So awesome job with all of these. They look really great. You created some great environments, and I love the storytelling element of it. Remember, just to keep the medium in mind would be my number one bit of feedback if I had to sum that up.
Absolutely, totally agree. It's going to be a little bit more clear, I think, in the next module. We're going to give you the actual poster size and everything. But yeah, absolutely great job. Love the concepts that you've been choosing.
Yeah, nice work.
Moving on to this one. Yeah, I wanted to show this one because I was really, really impressed with what you did. What you did actually here, Mike, is you incorporated the material I'm going to show in about 3 weeks with the different showing the lighting and the where the light's coming from in most of them. So I was really, really impressed with your work. I think it's really great. So I wanted to show it to people. Very dynamic with your background as well. So you see your character here with an angle. That's very cool. Then you have the bamboo in the back. It's very cool. Now we're talking about poster wise. There's a few of them that works really well, I think, as well. Actually, most of them, I think, work really well. So you have always majority of your action at the top, so you can have your title at the back. So that's give you plenty of good space here. You've been playing with foreground, background very, very well. So yeah, I wanted to show this one. I was pretty impressed with this. Scrolling. You already put your favorite, I think, here, so you can already see that it's working pretty well. So I was pretty impressed with this. That's pretty good work in terms of making it, because you went 2 steps ahead of me with showing already like a little bit of rendering on this. We're just not ready, but a few of them, it was missing just a few values in terms of contrast. So just having some dark to express just the deeper, but it was beyond what I wanted you guys to do this week. Really, this week was all about concept idea, putting your ideas down on canvas, starting from there. So yeah, so for that you nailed it. Fabien, did you want to say something about this one?
No, I think you covered that really well. Yeah, these all look incredible. Can tell you've definitely got a drawing background and a very strong style coming through there already. I love the movement that things like the snowflakes or the leaves or the, I guess, flames in the ones that you're on now add. Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
I love also the way that you've mocked them up with the text already. If you scroll down, David, if you have time, obviously, we're going to be covering one single poster for the run of these 6 weeks, so that everyone has enough time to really dive deep into that one poster. If you do have time, I think if those bottom 2 that are on the screen right now, what would be really cool is making just a series, like one from the main character's perspective, one with like the wolf as the main character, and maybe one with like either the grandma or the lumberjack or something. That's something you see with movie posters a lot, is where there's like a series of them that each of them feature a different character. If you have time to do that, that I think would be really cool. Could make a really, really powerful piece. But yeah, I love the framing with the bamboo in the background with the trees. Works really well. It's a little bit busy over behind the text, but obviously I know you've just kind of mocked that up pretty quickly. Obviously,
Also,
I'd say, sorry?
Also with color, I think it would be like different, because the text white on color would have like a bigger contrast.
That is a good point. Yeah, true. Color can definitely be used there. And you can always just make it slightly less detailed and busy with the grass down there.
Absolutely.
But yes, some small things like I'm not 100% sure with the way that the Little Red Riding Hood is a bit off to the left. I like that, but I feel it's making it slightly unbalanced maybe. In fact, both of them I think are slightly heavier on the left side than they are on the right, obviously, because there's a missing element there.
You mean those two, the two last one, the two bottom
Yeah,
ones?
exactly. I feel like having something to kind of pull the balance back to the right side um, could work. Otherwise, I'd probably move the character slightly more to the center.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Either that, but also what I can see. That's where it's hard for us to give you exactly the tips how to do this, because that's also something you could do with colors, for example,
mhm,
and you'd be able to just bring back that balance. Right now, what you could do is, and that's the one thing I didn't want to push this week. I'm showing really the work right now. We're going to go after that to a more practical tips for everybody else that I feel needs a little bit more tips. I'm going to draw a little bit after that, but in terms of this case, what you could have done, which was not part of the work that you had done this week, is just adding a little bit more values. Actually, I'm just going to put multiply here, a little bit more values, and just being able to have darker trees would already help. You see, just the difference between this and this will help a little bit. Just having a little bit of contrast is just because right now the values, when you squint, you have a good hole here, which is great, but then
mhm.
everything is pretty much the same value. So there's nothing that comes up and down. So if you were to just play a little bit more with the value and the background, and I'm just going to try to do that properly here, but just a little bit more, like bringing this one a little bit back, and then having these ones a little bit more front by just playing with the value, and it's going to just help the composition as well. Just already
What could
this.
be what could be interesting for you here actually is I know you're obviously a more advanced student and you've kind of jumped onto the adding like lighting into there already, but just for the balance for the actual composition alone, try maybe creating some just three valued just flat thumbnails
Yeah.
like in David's videos. I think that can really just stripping it down to that like most basic level can really help you nail down the composition, the balance, everything before you get into, and then the shading will help
Yeah.
you really push that to the next level.
That's why if I do like multiply, let's say, and I go, so you would have like, let's say that's too hard. That's too dark, I mean. But if you're able to just just block big shapes, like even that's too dark. Like you would have to just I'll show example. I got actually examples to show afterwards. But yeah, having just three shapes, you went, like I said, you went like 2 weeks ahead. So you'll be having fun in 2 weeks. But for now, everything works great. You just did more than was asking. So good job, very good job.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. Great job.
I want to show one more here. Here I wanted to show. Yeah, see, that's a good example here. When it comes to just three values, you're able to understand, and this is the work of Raina. Rayana. I'm sorry if I'm not able to pronounce that correctly. It's R R A
Rihanna,
I A.
Rihanna, I'd imagine.
Okay.
That's
So yeah,
just a disclaimer and apology for the entire 6 weeks ahead. If we butcher
yeah,
anyone's
exactly.
names, please just
I'm
let us know.
sorry. Uh, you can put that on my French accent. um, so yeah, so the here you have very clear 1 2 3 steps basically, where you understand what's in front of you, what's in the back, what's in the middle basically, and that's enough to understand just the concept, and it doesn't take time either. You'll have time later on. Still talking to Mike here to put some more ingredients. So back to Rihanna here. Beautiful work. I really like what I like about this is there's only six. They're all different. They're all clear. And they're all very centered on the character base and the storylines. So most of them are very good for posters. I'm going to point out a few things here that would not work, but I really like the concept that you've been choosing. So I'm going to just point out a few things that I like, and I'm just going to show a few things that you can make better. I like that you played with some elements here to bring in the foreground, to make her in the middle ground, and then the background. I saw a lot of example of you guys that just didn't do that, didn't play with the foreground, middle ground, background. So having something to cut, like a shape here, is helping, just adding some perspective and do the whole thing. And even though we have only three values, it really helps. So here you did the same thing. Here we have a framing with the face of the wolf. Here, obviously, we have something a little bit more centered, but then the moon is doing a very nice contrast to that. Here it's obviously just a big portrait, but it's very nice as well to see the three shades as well. Very cool composition. I really like those two, and yet I'm gonna have to say that for the poster it's gonna be hard to do them. I'll tell you why right now. Basically, it's because you're gonna have the text here. Because I was really going towards this one. I was like, I really like the concept, the reflection of the wolf like this. Obviously, it would be great, but because the text is gonna be here, you won't be able to have really the face of the wolf and see it properly. So maybe it would be good for you to just, if you have any trouble with this, putting the text on it and just see right away how it works. So maybe you'll be able to just modify them, or in this case, see that it does working. This is a beautiful image. It would make a beautiful illustration, but for this poster, I think it would be harder to do, where this one could be a little bit more manageable. What you could do is simply just bring them more up and maybe a little bit more small as well. Something like tiny bit more small, and then just bring that more up. And then you would be able to just have the ground that starts here instead. But very, very cool concept as well. And then you will have the space for the text right here. But beside that, this one is working well. This one is working as well, very well. This one, maybe the teeth would be a problem, but you would just have to make maybe the mouth smaller or more up. You could actually play with those things. Fabien, did you want to say something else? Otherwise, I'm gonna jump to some more tips.
I missed the first part of what you said because I was in the chat, but yeah, I think these work really well. I did catch you saying that the top right one wouldn't work as the text. I think the simple solution to that would just be scoot everything up. There's like a third, the top third of it is empty at the moment. And
yeah, but I feel it would be too close to.
It could be. Yeah, you might have to re-thumbnail it and play with the perspective to make it less tall.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a different angle. A different angle maybe could work. So imagine right now you have the camera, it's very front, but if you see it from a little bit more up, then you would have maybe all the information here. So it's still doable to do. It would be harder, obviously, to have like a different angle from the top. You would have a different perspective into it.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. I think they all work really well, though. I think they're very they read very well, very quickly. I don't know if you mentioned this, David. Like I said, I was in the chat. I think you might have some difficulties with the top center one, having most of the main elements be backlit. Most of the main characters can make it tricky to make them readable.
I didn't say anything about that because we're going to show some tricks about it, but obviously something backlit is always harder.
It's going to be tougher, but you can always add secondary light sources, which we'll be delving into light much more in weeks from week 3. Yeah, composition wise, I think they work really well. So yeah, great job.
Awesome.
Did you say you're going to jump onto some tips?
Yeah, because I have
we had a question actually.
Yeah.
So we had a question from Hadir, and sorry, I know it's been hard for me to kind of read the chat while talking also. If anybody has any other questions, and if I miss anyone's questions, just let me know. Hadir said, I always have problems with placing the different values. Do you have any tips that could help us choose to make the thumbnail pop more?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's going to be even more clear when I'm going to talk about lighting in 2 weeks. So right now, the one thing that I could tell you is obviously think about the direction of the light. We didn't cover that yet. I'm going to cover it in 2 weeks, like I said. But thinking about the direction of the light, you can already do it from, just from already what you know. So think about stuff like the moon, for example. The moon's going to be lit, right? It's going to be like the light. So obviously that's going to be darker because it's going to be backlit. Then I'm going to teach you later on how to put light in their face and still have that backlit effect. But for now, that's the way I think when I see where to place the values. So you want to think about the fact that it needs the higher contrast is going to attach the eye the most. So if I were to look at, let's say here, the contrast between the wolf and the background is the strongest one. So here, those two are very much the subject, not just her or him, but very those two, because they're forming the shape where you're going to look the first, and then within this you're going to have some details. If you wanted to have values that bring her as the front view, then what you would have to do is, and I'm going to just choose here. I'm going to choose this color here. Bear with me. What you would have to do is to make the contrast between the wolf and the background less. I'm painting all over here, but you'll see when I put the opacity down. So now you see that the biggest contrast we have is between her and here the wolf, where here it was the wolf and here was the biggest contrast. And the biggest contrast will always attract your eye. So right now you have, let's say in here you have this shape inside it. I'm gonna take another color and just draw on top of this so you guys see correctly. So you have this shape metal. So that's what we call framing, right? So because you put this shape here and this shape here, it brings your eye to look inside it because you have the contrast here and here. So that's the limitation. And then here we have softer contrast in the metal. So I'm guessing that the colors and the light will be just more in harmony. But if you wanted to have something a little bit more like she is the in front view, what you would have to do is kind of the same thing. You would have to, whoops, although no, I can't do that. You would have to just have her more contrasty than the rest. I'm doing a very, very fast job here just to give you an example. Obviously, you would have to do well, but here, now the story says something different already, right? What it says is she's more important. She has more importance in the composition. But if I take that out, then the wolf, her, and the background have kind of the same visual impact. But if I do this, that's totally different. So that's how you play with the value. So I cannot really tell you where exactly to place them. You have to think about what kind of message you want to give. What's the most important things you want the eyes to be attracted to, right? I've been talking about in the class about the focal point placement guidelines, all those things you have to think. And the focal point is always super important here. That's her, the focal point. If I take it, that's all of this that's become the focal point, if that makes sense. Fabian, did you want to add something to this?
So I'll be completely honest, I was in the chat again. So.
All good. I think I covered it pretty well. So yeah, so that's how you would put the values. Is there any other questions online before I move on to
just a quick question from Jennifer, who's asking just a quick question about the project as a whole, whether like the genre, so whether you want to do like realistic, anime, horror, steampunk, etc. Yeah. Whether there's any set genres, that's entirely up to you. So obviously, most of the time when a client hires you, they'll give you a direction on that. But in this case, we wanted to leave that a bit more open-ended for you guys to make just more fun and more useful for everyone. So pick whatever you think would be fun or challenging or
absolutely. Actually, what I would add to that is obviously for most of you guys, I'm expecting that your portfolio is not already a fair representation of your skills or what you want to be as an artist. You probably still, when you're learning, you're trying a lot of things. You might try 1 week to do something a little bit more realistic, another week to do something a little bit more cartoony. And obviously what a client, and we'll talk about it later on in the class, but what a client will look when he's going to hire you is about your portfolio. Your portfolio needs to be a good representation of what you can do. So obviously right now you got the choice, because I'm not to tell you what to do exactly, but it would be based on your style. If a client approaches you for a work and your portfolio has a lot of realistic pieces, he's not going to expect you to doing some anime as a reflection of your work. Obviously, he's going to come for what he already saw from you, which is realistic illustration, for example, right? So I would response to do the things you think that you want to do the most. If you feel like you would like to have a genre that's a little bit more cartoon, go for it. A little bit more for a children book, go for it. Realistic, go for it. Just think about what kind of portfolio you would like to present to client, what kind of work you would like to do, and from there you'll have a better understanding on what you want to do. Any other questions from the chat?
Yeah, so a question from Liba, who was asking, I'm not really sure what style I have, but I'm trying to learn digital painting in a realistic way. Is it okay if I try that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, this is a big issue for just about every artist when you're first getting started out, style. And I mean, it's such a like ambiguous kind of term. It's so hard to define style. And there's so many different ways that your style is going to come through. I think, and I think David, you're probably on the same page with me here. I think if you're just getting started out, especially, I think it's always useful to learn the rules before you break them. And essentially that's what style is. It's breaking the rules, right? It's moving past photorealism and putting your own touch on things. But I think to be able to do that, it's so important to actually understand how it works properly. It's similar to, I mean, the best example that I always give about this is Picasso, who obviously has a very strong style, but Picasso also, if you look at his earlier work, was a master at painting photorealistically also.
Yeah.
So I think when you're getting started out, don't worry about style too much yet. I think that'll come as you practice and just keep doing things later on. For now, just focus on learning the photorealistic, the way light behaves, the way things work. Just focus on that for now, and I think you can push the style later.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. I think style is going to be like a class we want to do in the future. Actually, right now, what we're going to do here, beside the style that you can choose for yourself, it's very learning the fundamental on how to just bring anything from imagination to reality. And yeah, like Fabien says, to do this, we are going to learn more fundamental tricks, but you can definitely mold them to any styles afterwards. But like Fabien says, don't sweat too much about your style right now. Really, let's try to just understand composition, lighting, coloring, perspective, background. Those things really going to help you and just make you go a longer distance.
Yeah, for sure. Another question from Tommy saying, as a beginner, concerning finished work, do you have any tips on how to balance complexity with dynamics? For example, choosing a concept that's not too hard to do, but still not boring.
So how to choose something that is good enough?
So how to balance like going super complex, but
Yeah,
hard to do, with like going very simple but easy to do.
yeah. That really depends for everybody, I would say. I know for me, like if I were to do personal pieces, then you can do really, like you can jump a few steps. But if you do like client work, you will have to just be realistic about what you can do. So the way I would approach it, especially for this project, I would say, all right, if you were to work for a client, they were to ask you to do a poster, what do you think you'll be able to do the most easily, that you'll be able to nail? Take that and add a little bit more of complexity to it. But don't go full on complex, because that's going to bring you frustration. And frustration is the antimatter of learning. When you're frustrated, you don't think about learning, you don't think about pleasure, you're just thinking about the fact that you're not realizing what you want to do. Frustration is not good. Having a little bit more of a challenge, I'm all for it. But if you go too much, then you concentrate on how you suck more than how you're learning a lot of things. And that's what I want for everybody in this program. I want you guys to learn and to get better. And for that, you just have to set yourself a bigger step, but not too big. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's actually, I wasn't sure how I'd answer that, but I think you answered that pretty well. So I hope that answers your question, Tommy. Question from Jennifer and also from Mikhail, who are asking, how refined should your thumbnails be when you show them to a client?
Okay, so you never show thumbnails to a client. Thumbnails are really for you to put your ideas down. Now, what we're going to do here is simple. I want you to do a thumbnail that you will almost present to your client, because at the end of this project, we will create a portfolio piece with all the material we create. So everything you create, we will bring them to a portfolio piece to attract clients, right? We want to do a client magnet with this. But usually you do thumbnails for yourself. So I want you to push them so they are clear, understanding the concept. The concepts are all different and they show the ideas and everything that we showed. But if I'm gonna give you more example in a minute, because I actually have a lot of example of that, and I want to show you guys how to make them better, quicker. Because a few guys went just a little bit too sloppy for presentation, but good enough for getting the idea down. and I just want to reach the gap in between. So really, usually thumbnails, this kind of thumbnails you would keep for yourself. What you would do is more a thumbnails that is kind of a sketch, right? And a sketch you would present to your client. That's going to come next week when we're going to do a sketch. Even next week, actually, it's going to be even more than a sketch you present to a client. So it's really like, right now, I'm trying to make a mix in between something you present to your client and something that you keep for yourself. Really, that's the middle ground I'm trying to reach right now. Do you want to say something about this?
All right, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure where you're going with that because you started with you never show your client thumbnails. I mean, obviously, a thumbnail. There's lots of different types and stages of a thumbnail, and you absolutely would show it just at a more refined level, I guess is what David's saying there. So like
Exactly. Yeah.
at the very first stage, this is really just to push your own ideas, to push your own concepts. But I guess you don't want to. I mean, why? So why would you personally not show a client a thumbnail at this stage, David?
Well, first of all, you want to make sure when you show something to your client that the idea is put down and it's, you can do it and it's well balanced. A client will have no imagination, none whatsoever. They're asking you for something and they want you to put the image that they have in their head on paper. So the more precise you are, the better it is, really. So if you're doing something too loose, they will imagine that it's going to be all crooked. I had so many experience with client that I was just doing something just a little bit too loose, and it would be like telling me like, okay, but you're going to fix that, you're going to fix that, you're going to fix that. And in my head, it was like, well, obviously I'm going to fix that. But in their head, it was not. So if you show them
Right.
something
Yeah,
that's like,
that's a really good point.
if it's crooked or the perspective is not good or the eyes are bigger than the other one, in your head it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to fix all that, but the client is going to be like, no, I don't want that. So it's very important to show what you can do straight up. So that's why I'm saying you don't show that to a client, because they'll just tell you like, all right, you don't get the job no more. You need to push them to a point that you're like, all right, this is the clearer idea I can give to my client for him to understand what I'm going to do as a final product. So it's really reaching the aha moment of the client that says, okay, yeah, he's the good person for the job, basically.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. Just because you can see the dots, don't assume that your client will be able to connect the dots. Yeah, I guess you have to put yourself in the head of your client who probably isn't familiar with the whole artistic process. They've just spent a bunch of money on hiring someone, and they're imagining they have this great image in their head. And when you show them the thumbnail, it's obviously going to be nowhere near as refined as they're imagining it, and it can scare some clients off pretty quickly that way for sure. So that's a really good point.
I think it's a perfect way for me to jump right here. So I show guys a few sketches that I think were in the right direction. Obviously, I choose a few of you guys that did a great job. It just they need to be pushed a little bit more. And I'm going to show you what and how and why, basically. So I had just three of them, and then we're going to go through just Photoshop to Facebook and scroll around a few of those guys. So I'm going to start here with the work of Anna Sophia. Anna Sophia, I'm an artist. I look at your stuff and I'm like, this is going to be great. It looks fun. There's a lot of cool ideas there. But right now, your sketches need to be just a little bit more tied up because they're hard to understand, basically. You see, I'm just going to show you what, like, you don't need to push them too much right now, just enough so it would be easy for someone that looks at your work, that understand. So first of all, one thing that you can do really quickly, and that's for everybody here that's listening to this, if you did the same thing, same message goes for you. Just tied up your lines. Having some lines like that is great, but you should pass and have some just clearer lines. So right now what I'm going to do is just tie it up a little bit, and then I'm going to show you just a before and after to show you that you don't need to be crazy about it, but just enough to have a better understanding. Yeah, I can even do that maybe. See here what's happening here. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm guessing it's a mushroom, so maybe I'm going to put some mushroom here. So I'm just going to paint over that. And then you can just have just some clearing the lines that are everywhere. And then just if you want to have a mushroom here, just have something a little bit clearer. Obviously, I'm not exactly sure what you want to put there. I'm just assuming that's going to be that, but Could be something else. It's a mushroom here. Same thing here. Here you could maybe add a little bit more texture. I'm not sure what those shapes are. Are they bush or something else? Same thing with the character here. Maybe having just something a little bit more worked. Whoops. Just having just clearer shape. Even if you want to do geometric shape, because it was pretty geometric shape what you did, just having just clearer lines, you know. So if you want to do just a triangle to express something, and then I'm losing my voice slowly. I'll have to take some water in a bit. But anyway, just having just clearer lines. So just I'm going to do a before and after here. Just you see that's already better than this. So just having something to tie it up. So like I'm able to imagine like here you have a guy in a bottle. It took me really 2 times to look at it to understand that, because it's just not they're too much scribbly. So you would just have to go through it again and do some clearer lines on it. Same thing with the faces here. Just having a little bit more time on it, but the concepts are looking great. The ideas are looking good, but the sketches are just too scribbly. Did you want to say something about this, Fabian?
Yeah, I think you've said that pretty well. Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. I think you've got some really strong concepts and ideas there. I love the guy in the bottle, the caterpillar. Ones I think the bottom left one especially could be a very cool dynamic composition with like the kind of spiral of the caterpillar. But yeah, it is a little hard to see what's going on there, and I think the more clear you can get at this stage, this is like the blueprint that your whole illustration is going to be built on.
Yeah.
So you really want to spend a little bit of time on making sure that like the blocks of different values work well together. Really try to like simplify it, break it down as much as possible with like clear shapes rather than scribbling at this stage. I think the scribbling is great at like during the concept stage of it, like when you're first coming up with as many ideas as you can as quickly as possible. You obviously don't want to like slow yourself down with rendering things in details. Then I think it's like after you've got down as many ideas as you can, then really take your time to
Absolutely.
refine them.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. Like, I'm sorry. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, say what you're going to say because my
I
next comment will
was
take it just on a different direction.
I was just saying that like Fabian says, like I'm the first one to have like scribbly line all over the place when I do, but obviously there's another stage that you have to bring it after that to just clear the idea for everybody else, that it's not in your head, basically. Like your client, for example, which is the person that you should worry the most. That person needs to understand what they're looking at by a second. Usually the attention of anybody that looks at an image is between like 3 and 5 seconds, I think. So if you don't understand what you're looking at them, it's just not going to work.
Well, especially, and that's especially the case for a movie poster, right? Again, I think a lot of similar feedback I'd give on this one as I would for earlier. I can't remember student's name, but the one with the backgrounds and the small characters. Somebody could remind me.
Which
Earlier in I think it was the second or third one we looked at. What doesn't matter for now, but I guess is this, yeah, that one exactly for sure. What
that was
student was
Cynthia.
that? Cynthia. So Anna, I'd take a look also at the feedback that we gave Cynthia. I think a lot of similar things apply. I think these would all make beautiful illustrations in graphic novels or books or something, a medium where people have more time to sit and look at an illustration.
Absolutely.
I think something like a movie poster needs to really, it's like you have that one shot, you don't have people's attention already like you do in a book. It has to immediately hook the character. And I think making it too complex with something like ones with like the character having their back turned. The one I think in the bottle is, it could either be very hard to read or it could be an incredible illustration. I love the idea behind it. I think it would be hard to get the attention where you want it straight away, which is almost always in portrait, the character's face, especially for a movie poster, because a character's face is going to like draw attention very quickly. And
It's
that's
a
why I think
natural
so that
focal point. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that one could work if you make the character's face a lot lighter and just the more contrast there, make that the first focal point. I think the center top one, I don't think would work so well for a movie poster because there's just a lack of a clear big character unless you made the caterpillar
The
much more
center.
central and like much bigger, and then you'd have to spend much more time on really rendering the caterpillar because the caterpillar would then become the core character.
Yeah.
Um, so just some things to keep in mind there. So I think we covered that quite a
Very
bit
well with Cynthia's work. Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
sure. So make sure to take a look at that also. But yeah, just keep pushing some ideas and keep refining them. I think you've obviously got a very creative mind and you're off to a very strong start. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you push these.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, here, the work of T.C. Marriott. I wanted to show this one because it's important to show diversity in the six that you choose. And you were, if I remember correctly, I was reading what you put on Facebook, and you were saying that you had a lot of difficulties in your ideas. It took you a little bit of time to go through something that you like. And I'm guessing that when you find those, you finally find something that you like, so you show those, and that's great. I'm happy that you find what you like. But right now, what I see is three concepts, and in those three concepts, what I see is one concept, which is very a front view of a character, and that's great if that's what you want to go through. You should definitely show it, but it's important at this point to push the ideas, to go over and beyond what you think you're able to do, even if you have to scratch everything that you draw. The idea is really just to push and push and push and push. It is, and I'm not gonna lie here, it is the artist part of illustration, is finding an original idea to express. After that, I know as a beginner, you guys think that it's very hard because it's hard to render, it's hard to do lighting, it's hard to coloring, obviously. But once you'll know all of that, if you don't know how to push ideas, what you'll do is just copying photos. Still, you need to push your ideas and try to think about camera angles and try to think about just concept. Like, yeah, you got a good concept here with the moon and the space, the space suit. Really love that, and then the butterfly. That's great. But then those are pretty much similar, and they're all kind of the same camera. They're all kind of the same view. So that's the one thing I wanted to point at. Don't be afraid to just think outside the box. Even if you want to finish, even if you know you're going to finish with this one because that's the one you want to do, then put it aside and just do 20 more that are all different, all crazy things if you want to, but try to push to things. The other thing I want to point about these ones is just the values. The three values that you choose are just not enough contrasty, so it makes a little bit like flat. It's hard to understand very the front, the back, and the middle ground right now. So just make sure when you do those values to have a little bit more contrast in between, so a darker dark, the mid gray, and then something that's close to the white, basically. Anything you wanted to add to this, Fabian?
No, I think you covered that pretty well. Yeah, I think they're very clear. They're very they read very well. I think yeah, just try to push it a bit more. But yeah, I think you're off to a great start. I'll be honest, I was in the chat there again, so I didn't hear all of what
Okay.
David said.
That's all good. I think I covered the point. But yeah, so I really like the concepts that are there. I would just like to see a little bit more, basically. And then I wanted to see this one. Now, this one is not working for reasons that are obvious. We don't understand what they are. And that's the perfect example of having an idea in your head, but then you have to sell it to your client. And if you show this to your client, he's not gonna understand anything. Obviously, maybe in your head, Josh, doing this, you're like, all right, this is a forest with the moon that goes in the lake, and there's reflection everywhere. And maybe this is the portrait, and there's the moon in the background, and then you're like, well, you know, see, even here, I don't know. It has a problem with these. You need to push them a little bit more. So I'm guessing, for what I see, I'm not sure if you did them digitally or if you did them analog. It seems like it could be analog. If it's digital, then make sure that you put your lines on top of everything. And if it's analog, just trace back on top your lines, because right now we lost all the lines. And that's the one thing. Obviously, this is, like I said, it's good enough for you to understand and put your ideas down. That's the scribbling that you do. But then you have to have something more refined. So try to have lines that goes on top of this. Just even like for now, the only concept that I'm able to read here is the face. I know there's a face here. Well, try to just bring back, I don't have enough pixels, but I know, just bring back the face here, just having just some facial features to your character, and then you don't have to paint the hair, but just having just even just the shape of the hair showing. It's just going to help understand your concept and sell it better. Okay. So yeah, so I wanted to cover that. Now, if there's question, I'm going to answer them now. Otherwise, I'm going to go to Facebook, and for the next 5-10 minutes or so, I'm going to go through Facebook and talk my way through.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, we actually have a couple of questions, and we're approaching that 90-minute mark. So I think we'll probably be busy for a few minutes with these questions. So should I just start reading them out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So question from Lee Ba, who's asking, how do people manage to get complex images to read at a glance?
Well, it's all about shapes. It's all about shapes. So imagine this. I'm going to create a new document for that. So imagine this. If you want to be able to read a portrait, you need to have something that you can read very, very small. So that's the reason why artists always going very, like, they're just when they have a canvas in front of them, they will just go a few feet back to understand. If you're able to read an image that is that small, and here I'm just going to make a silhouette, but that's the idea. So right now, you can read that from here, you can read that from there, you can read that from there. That's very readable because you have very understanding shapes. Now, obviously, this is just a black and white thing, but the same thing occurs when you're doing your illustration. And that's the reason why you want to do thumbnails with values at first, because you want to establish that balance. I'm going to give you an even better example of this. I'm going to do 3 values here. So I'm going to go with the background, which is going to be a light gray. Then I'm going to have my character on a new layer, which is going to be black. Or actually, no, it's going to be white. And then I'm going to have some elements of framing that will be black in front of it, such as this, this, and this, for example. That's going to be easy for me to read it from super far away. And that's the kind of a thing that you want to do. So I'm able to read that from anywhere. And that's the reading. You don't want to lose that along the way. You're adding rendering, color, texture, details. You always want to have the same shape that read the same way. And that's how you'll be able to make something that is very complex, readable from any places. And that's a challenge. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm going to give you tricks during the whole program, how to just make sure that, because a huge part of it is lighting. See here, we have 3 distinguished values, and lighting will always be the one thing that brings the values on anything that you draw. Really, the only reason why you see stuff is because there's light on it. Otherwise, everything would be black all the time. So to understand light is going to help you to keep that balance between your elements and to keep it crisp depending on the distance that you have. Once you understand that, when you understand lighting, how it works, you'll be able to play with nuances and be able to adjust the shadows that are at the right place to bring you the right contrast and keep those shapes alive along your illustration. Was that making any sense? Were you in the chat again?
Yeah, I was in the chat. Yeah.
That's okay.
But I just switched over to my screen share, and it looks like you were explaining something cool. So I completely missed that. Sorry.
That's all good, bro. I know. That's all good.
Um,
I think it was making a lot of sense. I'm just so yeah. I was just checking if you're listening, but obviously you were not.
I failed the test.
That's all good.
Um, one one thing to keep in mind also, this is something we said earlier, like when in doubt, always like the zoom out test. I
I
think is one
already
of the
covered
best ways. Sorry,
it. I already
did you
covered
cover that? All right, cool. I won't repeat what David said then. If you have any follow-up questions, just let us know. But
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
hope I'll trust David's answer without my supervision. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Let's see. Michael was asking, how much time do you usually spend on making research and thumbnails?
It depends on the project, really. Um, Everybody has, I think, the same kind of problem. You know, we get excited and we jump on our canvas way too fast. I think research is really, really important. Finding the right images, looking at different ideas, looking at different artists, also how they manage to do the things that you want to do. All those things, it's a huge research you want to do before to have just the tools to be able to push. In terms of time, I don't know. It can take me 20 minutes, like it can take me like a day. But usually you just want to make sure that you have everything, and you'll also make research along the way, right? I start an illustration, let's say, and I start with an idea to have a certain lighting. Well, I'll have all my tools, which I'm going to present you a bunch of really cool tools. I think it's next week or the week after. A really cool tools to find like different shadows and everything. And so I go through all my tools and I go through Pinterest and I find the images, and just you just want to it's a personal thing, basically, right? It depends on the project that you have. There's no limit time. There no client will come at you and be like, you only have like an hour research, right? It's really up to you to find what you need to make your dream come true. Fabian.
Cool. And on that sound of David fumbling with his flask in the background.
Sorry, it's a bottle of water.
um, let's see. Yeah, I had one, I just lost it. Question from Jennifer asking, will a dynamic style character look better than like a plain portrait, for example? Will like a front view look better than a third, like a 3/4 view, etc.? There's really no better in this. Like there's one thing, one style, one composition, one way of structuring your painting isn't better than another. They're
Yeah,
just like options you have in your creative toolkit, right? Depends on
absolutely.
the situation, depends on the poster, depends on what you're trying to do. I think some will generally fit better for certain briefs, but I think, yeah, and it's really up to you. Did you have any other words about that, David?
Yeah, no, I would say the same thing. It depends on the concept, right? It's just you have to do sketches. That's the reason why sketches are there. It's so you can try and see how it looks. At the end of the day, you're trying to express an emotion. So if the emotion requires a front view more than 3/4 view, yeah, that can be possible. So at that time, it would be your call as an illustrator to find the best pause for the right emotion that you want to vehicle. That's how I would say it.
For sure. Cool. All right, I think one or two more last questions. Then we'll try to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone that's stuck with us through this and asking questions. Yeah, it's been really cool seeing what everyone's saying. Also, lots of comments people have been adding. So very cool. Sorry, I'm rambling because I'm I'm trying to find a question because I know there was one. But oh yeah, here, right. So do clients usually ask for mood boards, or is that something you make for yourself to head in some direction?
Client can ask for anything anytime, really, but usually you do a mood board for yourself to be able to find the ideas to give them a sketch. They will want to see a sketch. In this case, I'm making everything part of the client brief because I think it's important always think this way, because the client could ask for it and just see what you're doing. It's possible at the end of the day the client has has the big piece of how do you say that, big piece of the stick, I don't know, like there's an expression for that. They're in control of the whole project basically.
Wait, has the bigger stick, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, there's an expression in French, but I'm trying to make a
I
translation.
think it has the bigger stick is
Yeah,
the,
okay,
the
fine, all
expression
right,
you're
cool.
looking
Well,
for.
that's fine enough then.
It's the expression we'll go with.
But yeah, they could ask for it, but usually no, that's only for you. I think it's cool to think about just having the material ready to show to your clients. So if they want to see it, it's there. So doing a research is important for that. So you're able to actually back also your ideas, and they'll understand also where you come from. Like I got an example right now. Right now I'm working for a commission for a company. They want portrait, they want avatar on the website, and I started with a portrait that then I showed to my client, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't understand. How did you get there?" I was like, she didn't like it. The color were not right. She didn't want it that, and so I showed her my research. And instantly she was like, okay, I know where you're going, so I understand a little bit more. She was feeling already more warm to the idea. She still didn't want to go there, but just showing her the research that I did and where I wanted to go, she was like, all right, I understand what your vision you were going for. So like she was let's say she was less pissed that I took a different direction that she wanted, basically. And then I had to just make sure that she had the right thing. But that's the reason why you want to have research like there to show to your clients. But usually, first off, you won't show that, but it's always good to have it to just back you up.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. It's always a fine line, a delicate balance between showing not enough and showing too much.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it can very often more easily kind of land on the side of showing too much and overwhelming your client.
Yeah.
Because we're creating, as artists, you create all this awesome stuff. You're like really excited about the concept, the mood board, all the stuff you're creating. But at the end of the day, the client just wants security that they're going to get a great final outcome, and they're constantly worried. They're like, I'm spending money, am I going to get my money's worth? That's like the question that's constantly going through their head in a loop. So they're like looking at everything. That's like the filter that they're looking at everything through, the lens. So you just have to be aware of that, and be aware that, like, again, it's like we were saying earlier, don't expect them to connect the dots. Even though you know where you're going with stuff, a client might not even know what a mood board is. Sometimes it can be useful. Again, it really depends on the project. It's really hard to give like sweeping, like to make sweeping statements on that, because sometimes like the client themselves won't actually know like the style that they want themselves yet. So in that case, I think a mood board's great for conveying like the general style or genre of something, so that you can work on that. So it's quicker to create a mood board than a final illustration, obviously. So if you can,
it's also less frustrating. It's a good point you're putting there, Fabian. Actually, if your client sounds like he doesn't know what he wants, be very careful with those kind of clients. Usually they'll be the more difficult. But C, don't give them anything that is really refined. Give them a mood board and a few sketches, and that's it. Make sure that you don't put work on for a client. Like, it happened to me too many times where you work for clients and it ends up that you have to just be like, all right, let's agree to disagree and move on, because they didn't have any vision. They were expecting you to create something from their head, which is, it's impossible. If the communications are not there, you cannot create something for a client that doesn't know what they want.
I think actually showing clients mood boards can be very powerful for that.
Yeah.
If often a client like has an idea of what they want, but they can't put it into words. I think that's a huge problem too. They don't have the vocab or the knowledge, to the experience to put into words exactly what they want. So showing them several different, so you can use mood boards as like a tool to kind of like ask them visually, what exactly do you want?
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that answers your question. As with so many things, again, it depends, but I hope that helps anyways. All right, let's tackle, I think there's one last question. Moon was asking, how many reference images will you usually search for during the research stage?
Oh, as many as I need. It really depends. And usually it's going to be like during the whole process. Like I will have maybe like depending on what I'm doing, like there's everybody has things that they are more comfortable working with from imagination, sometimes even from memory. So like let's say I'm able to draw facial features from memory today because I did them so many times. But when it gonna comes to maybe the pose of a body, having a reference for me to help me find the right pose is gonna help me a lot, for example. So you want to find the reference that just gives you the bits that you're missing in your memory, because really reference are there for that, to add reference in your memory. You won't at some point remember all those things, but you're working there, right? So sometimes I will create a project, I will start with my outlines. I will need a few different photos, references to just create the outline. So I have a sketch. It's very scratchy, scribbly lines, and then I wanted to make a clear outlines for my client, right? So I'll have some specific pictures to help me to be able to do this, and from there, usually I'm able to actually go with just starting to rendering, and then past a certain point, I'll have a research for maybe photos about clearer ways to understand the lighting that I'm putting on my illustrations. So I choose a lighting from a certain angle. It creates certain shadows. Maybe I put the base under my rendering, but if I want to put the greedy details on the face, let's say for example, maybe I'll have like a reference. I'll find for a reference that has close up of how to I can do exactly the different nuances on the skin tone inside the shadow, for example, of those things. So it's really just a research that you're doing along the way as well. Mood board is a research to find the core ideas, a little bit of the shapes, a little bit of pauses. But then along the way, you want to find all the elements that you need to really push that to a professional level. Nobody knows everything from memory, except if you're like geniuses, and I don't believe in those things. So really everybody works just hard to memorize and keep on learning. And that's just a continuous I don't want to say battle, but just curve of learning, basically. Fabien?
Cool. Nice. Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had something smart to add, but I was in the chat.
You guys need to know also that I'm way more fresh than Fabien. We have like 6 hours of difference, and for him, it's like
That's very true. It is approaching 9 p.m. for me.
yeah.
A whole day behind me. While David's just. Well, I guess you're not. It's what time is it for you, David? Approaching 3
It's
p.m.
gonna be 3, so it's like it's fresher than you.
Cool. Hey, all right. Last question. I think it's a perfect one to wrap it up on, which is, will you guys be able to watch this later? We're gonna post a link to it.
Just put our faces. I just realized that. Wait, stop. Faces. What's up, guys? I just realized I was just like jumping from like one image that we already show, guys. Can I put your face as well? Oh, you're back there. All right, go. You were saying something?
I was saying, last question was, is this going to be recorded? Will you get later access to this? Yeah, absolutely. So this is recorded. We're going to put the recording in the course area also. So you can watch it at the same URL. YouTube will automatically record it. And we'll make sure to put a link in the course area. You'll, of course, get lifetime access to that too. So you can go through that at any point again. So thanks so much to everyone that asked questions, that showed up, that watched this replay. Thanks also especially to everyone that was in the question, giving each other answers, support. I know like Nolan was super active in the last part. I know a lot of other people were at the beginning too, but I forgot the names. So big shout out to you guys especially. Let's see what to end this on. So
yeah, guys.
I'm rambling.
Thank you so much for showing us, like Fabien says. I hope this was useful. We're going to have a lot more of that with all the group session that I'm going to create as video for the next weeks. But you can imagine it's going to be a little bit of the same. I'm going to take the work of students. I'm going to do paintovers. I'm going to give you guys tricks and tips to make sure that everybody stays at the same level and follow the course as easily as possible. And obviously, there's going to be the community. You saw me, I'm already in the community. I'm going to watch it all over the whole duration of the program. If you have any questions, you can tag my name, tag Fabien's name. I will make sure to have a look. Also, like I was saying at the beginning, guys, make sure to give yourself each other comments. Like everybody is able to give critiques, and it's really important for anybody to learn. It just makes that much of a better quality in terms of community. So when you post your work, make sure to just give work comments to 2 other people. This way everybody learns together and just makes that a lot more fun like this. So
Yeah, for sure.
I think I would finish
Yeah,
it with
on that one also, actually, on that note, I know with the Facebook algorithm, sometimes it can lead to some posts will get a lot more exposure than others. And that means that some people don't get their work seen as much and commented on as much. So my mini homework assignment for you guys right now, once you jump off this call, is jump into the group, try to find someone who doesn't have any or a lot of comments on their work yet, who could do with some feedback, and just try to give at least 2 people constructive feedback. Help them, pick a thumbnail. Tell them maybe which thumbnail you'd pick and why. I think that would be very helpful for everyone. And that way we can all really just grow as a community. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you've enjoyed this. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and happy painting, everyone.
Ciao, guys.
Take care.